What's up, everybody? In today's video, I want to cover how to create a new user in Active Directory. This is a domain user, so once it's created in Active Directory, that user will be able to log into any computer or server, depending on their permissions, that is on that same domain. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is locate your domain controller. Really a domain controller in your network. There could be multiple. Generally, you can add it from any of them, and then it'll sync the data back and forth. Once you create a user on one, it should eventually sync to the other ones in the domain. So the ways you could find your domain controller are by using your RMM, which is usually the easiest and most convenient option. This would be like your Kaseya's, your say ConnectWise, your what else is out there? Ninja RMM, Datto RMM, Atera. Any one of those generally has a column in your list of whatever they decide to call it, devices, computers, servers. That'll tell you if the device, the agent that you're looking at is a domain controller or not. And so I know from Kaseya, there's a little column. I think it's like your domain/work group, and then there'd be a little DC icon next to the domain name that would indicate that it was a domain controller. You could also usually there's like filters for that type of stuff, or you could filter just the domain controllers. So if you have an RMM, it's very easy to usually find it that way. It'll tell you which one has the is a domain controller in your network. The other way is if you are on a machine that is on that domain, you can run a few commands, which I'll move over here so you can see them. And basically, you could run a command like the set L1 here, and command prompt will return your logon server. This is there's only one domain controller in this network, but it's going to show you the one that this computer used to connect to. So there's one of them. You could do echo logon server, and it will return the same thing. And then if you're using PowerShell, you could do just this env logon server, and you'll get, again, the domain controller that you're currently using to authenticate. You could also do system info, as just typing out the word system info is one word. That'll take a little bit to run, and it'll give you a breakdown of like a whole bunch of information about your computer, your performance, your RAM, your CPU, and one of those things will be your logon server. So now that we have that squared away, you're going to want to connect to your domain controller. So in this case, I RDP'd to it. This is it. And so there's one other way you could create. You can create users. You could use the RSAT tools, the RSAT tools. Those are remote server administration tools, Microsoft calls them. And it's basically where is it? Here they are. This is it. It's basically a set of tools that you can install on a regular Windows machine or a server that's not a domain controller, and it will give you the same tools as a domain controller, essentially, or very similar tools that allow you to manage your domain from your workstation or from, again, a server that's in the network or something like that, something that's not a domain controller. It's pretty easy to set up. If you're managing the same domain that your workstation is on, and you can connect to it easily, then this is usually a pretty easy route to go through. If you're like working in an MSP and you have to manage like 50 domains or 100 domains or hundreds of domains, then this obviously won't work because you're not on that same network and you don't have a way to connect to them remotely. So this is really only a use case if you're like doing internal IT work and you happen to be on the same domain or have access to the same domain on the same network that you're managing. So anyway, traditional way, jump on the domain controller and open up the Active Directory Users and Computers application. So this will open up, and then if it's obviously there's no desktop icon for it, you just go ahead and search for it. Generally, it's in this Windows Administration Tools folder. You can see that there is right there. There's Active Directory Users and Computers. There's a couple other Active Directory applications: the Administrative Center, the Domains and Trusts, PowerShell module, Sites and Services. So you're looking for this one, the Active Directory Users and Computers. So once that opens up, you'll see your domains here. And this is only a one domain network, so you can see it here. And then I can expand this. And so some of these are built on, some of these OUs, these containers are here for like every domain that gets created, like the default ones. And then some of them are ones that are user created or system created. So in this case, this lab organizational unit is one that I've created. And so generally you'll see a lot of the same ones over and over again, but there's usually one folder that stands out that's kind of like, you could tell isn't like a default folder or container. And so in this case, it's lab. That one just, you'll probably see here like your company name or, something along those lines that indicate that it's sort of like not a default one. And sometimes you have to look around a little bit to find those, but you could also just do, if you're looking for like, if you know where a user is, you could also right click and find and see where that user is located, and that could kind of help you identify what the main OU is. But you're going to find your main OU, and then in here there's usually sub OUs or like OUs inside of that OU that are for different groups of users. Sometimes you just have one folder, sometimes you have groups. It really depends on how it was determined that they wanted to structure it. So these can kind of be different in a lot of cases depending on how they built out their OUs. In my case, I have a lab user's OU and I have an administrator's OU. And then I have a group's OU. And so basically, that's how I structured mine. You might see, you might have like, company users, then you might have inside of that one, you might have, accounting, executives, this department, that department, or you may have them in right underneath your main folder. It really just depends on how they decided to group these up and how they wanted to break everything out into different OUs. An OU is a container. It just basically helps you be able to manage a group of users. You can just set certain policies or certain permissions to certain groups, and so that kind of help with, say you had a group for, like I said, users, and you had a group for administrators. You could technically, if you have an OU for administrators and an OU for lab users, you could then technically just drag somebody between the groups. Say if they got a promotion or something, you could move them from one to the other. And based on that move, there might be a series of changes that happen because of that just moving them between one OU to the other OU. There could be permission changes. There could be all kinds of benefits that happen when that person, they might lose some access, they might gain some access, all by just dragging and dropping that user from one OU to another. So that's a possibility. That's why you kind of want them separated, so it's easier to see, easier to follow, and then easier to do like group-based permissionings or OU-based permissions. So you're going to want to go ahead and right-click into this OU and go over to New, and then go to User. And this will give us the new user object creation window. And I'm going to go ahead and type in a name. So we'll go with Tim Smith, and then so you have the option for first name, initials, last name. Their full name gets generated based off of the first and last name. And then they have the login name. This is their actual username that they will use to log on to their computers. So we'll go ahead and do T Smith. Every organization can be different. Some of them use the Tim.Smith, or the first name dot last name, or they do first initial last name, or first name last initial. It's pretty much up to how the organization was structured. So just as best practice kind of rule, you want to keep it the same as whatever they were using previously. That's just sort of the best, just to keep it clean. Just keep using the same structure everybody else is already using in your domain, and you'll keep it nice and clean. So we'll hit next, and then here we have the password option. So I'm just going to throw in some generic password. And then here there's some options. So we have the user must change password at next login. User cannot change password. Password never expires. Account is disabled. I recommend using this first option here, just for general security practices. The user should be creating their own passwords. Obviously that adds a hurdle. It's much easier to say, yeah, here's your password, and then you both know it, and then it's much easier to if they forget it or something, at least you know what it was, or whatever else. But they really should change their own password and set something that only they know, just obviously for best security practices. So I'm going to do that. Hit next, and then just an overview page here, and I'll hit finish. And there's the user. So what'll happen now is if that person goes to log in with that username and then the password that I just created, it will prompt them to create a new password that'll be their password going forward. And that is how you create a new AD user. That's the most generic way that's there. I mean, there's other information here. So beyond just creating it, they could log in now, but they're not going to have much access to anything or whatever else. So what you might want to do is open it up, and you can also set your description of their account. If it's like a service account or something, that's something used just for logging into authenticating certain applications, what office they're in, telephone number, email address, if they have a web page, I guess. There's also an address field. There's also an option to, again, review those settings that we created before as far as, and more options as far as their passwords and what they can and can't do. If the account has an expiration date on it, when they can log in, their profile, if you have a logon script that has to be in there, or a home folder. That's kind of like I guess somewhat legacy stuff now, but yeah, you may have to fill out these fields based on your onboarding procedures. Telephone numbers, organizational information, job title, department, company, their manager. You can actually pick another user in here and fill in that field. There you go. And then you just hit apply at the end and hit OK. There's some other stuff in here as well. The other one that's most commonly used is the member of. This is where you would set groups and stuff like that. So for example, if this was a accounting user and they needed access to certain accounting drive shares, or storage, or they had to log in certain computers or certain applications, you can come in here and go into advanced and find now. This is the easiest way that I found, is just typing in accounting, and then we have this accounting group here. Then I'm going to hit OK and hit OK. So now they're part of the accounting group as well as the regular domain users, and that would allow them to, maybe that group does something that allows them to do something that they couldn't do as a regular user. Get access drive shares, access certain applications, log into certain devices. Maybe it's tied to another provisioning system that allows them to get a license for QuickBooks or something that automates that process. So there's all kinds of things that little just group change could do. Again, generally in your onboarding procedures, you should have all of it documented. If you're going to add this user, this is the group they get, this is why they get it, all that type of stuff. But this is the actual process of going through and creating it. Another thing you could do is say somebody has permissions that somebody's set up already the same way that you want another user to be set up. So like, I already have an accounting user now. Maybe another accounting person started. I don't want to have to go redo some of the same fields and re-pipe up the same information. You could actually right-click and hit copy and just put in the new information here. And once you fill this out and hit complete, it will have all of the same information or the same groups and similar configuration as the other user that was there. So that could save you a few steps if somebody has the same access that you want to give to somebody else. And yeah, beyond that, you can go into, other groups and, other users and take a look at what they have for permissions by going into here and seeing domain admins. So this user is a domain admin. They're in that group, so now they have access to logging into servers, and they can run things as an administrator on different machines throughout the network. So yeah, that's pretty much the majority of what creating an AD user looks like. If they lock themselves out, you can go to the account tab and you can just check this box. It'll say here they're like locked out. You can check this box, hit apply, and then hit OK, and that'll unlock their account if they've tried to log in too many times and failed. But yeah, that's how you create an AD user. Pretty straightforward process. I hope this was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe. Our website has some resources that you might find useful as well. Confused IT is a non-for-profit organization ran by IT professionals. Our mission is to make IT knowledge more accessible and easier to digest. Thanks for watching.